The 2026 NFL Scouting Combine continues in Indianapolis. Welcome to First Stop Indy, presented by EOS Fitness. I'm Paul Gutierrez, and this is episode 2. Well, the Raiders' quest for not only a potential franchise quarterback, but also supplemental players through the draft resumes with 40 times, bench presses, and interviews. Well, Raiders GM John Spytek and new coach Clint Kubiak, they're on the case in Indy. Joining me to help make sense of it all is analytics expert Cynthia Frelund of the NFL Network. And Cynthia, it has been far too long since we caught up back in the days of Upon Further Review, but thank you for joining me from the Combine.
Of course, I'm going to tell you this setup here, like Radio Row has every team set up. This is the best one. It's the most organized. This is incredible.
Only all the best for you and only, Cynthia. So when we talk on UFR, it's always about the numbers. You have your numbers to know, numbers to watch, things like that.
Yep.
Now at the Combine, it's more than just simply the underwear Olympics, right? I mean, there's got to be numbers flying around everywhere. You've got to be coming up with the numbers everywhere. What are some of the most important numbers that you're coming across? The measurables, stats, things that Raider fans really need to watch out for throughout the week of the Combine.
Well, we always love the fun underwear Olympics, like a fast 40. Who doesn't love that?
Right.
But ultimately, what you want to do is you want to make sure what you think you saw from their college film just matches where the athleticism kind of nets out. Because all of the film work is done. All of their resumes are already on film. This is just like the last check to be like, okay, did you follow the directions? Did you prep for your 40? Were you nice they say at a train station, were you nice to everyone at the train station? Right. It is a rite of passage for any NFL player. They have to go through the same process over and over again. Can you do that with grace? Because that will show some of your personality. Because I'm telling you, people will ask, like, the person who cleans their room, did they do anything weird? Like, all this, you find out everything here. But none of the specific things, as long as they're in the right ranges, right. Totally fine. Nothing's gonna.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so it goes that deep. It goes that deep into asking, just literally. And it's interesting because when you talk to John Spytek, he talks about character issues and guys that love football. And you can't really put a number on that per se, but what are some of the things that John Spytek and Clint Kubiak are looking for specifically, you think, in their first pairing as a unit here at the Combine?
Well, I think the cool thing that the Raiders get to work with is between free agency and the draft, and obviously controlling the entire draft, right. They can structure the entire thing to get a lot better fast. Meaning you have a lot of picks, we get it, but the first pick, which I feel like we already know where that's going. I mean, is Fernando Mendoza already buying real estate? I don't know, whatever. Right. But when you're looking at some of the other needs, like, well, how do we get the best, pass catchers, right? Why do we get the best O-line? I'm going to always go with O-line, right? Sure. How do we add to the cornerback room? And being able to have so much control over the entire draft, that gives you the ability to look at everything. And you got $91 million in cap space. Like, there you go. Like, you've got all of these different ways to make the best team possible. And I think that's what it's all about. It's like, how do you get the guys what is the new definition of a Raider? How do you find as many of those guys as possible and get them all paid or drafted accordingly?
And that all goes through the numbers, obviously. And last year with what happened with the Raiders, like you just mentioned, they have the number 1 pick. So not a lot of positive numbers, I guess, that we talked about last year on UFR last season. What, though, if you were looking for something positive, you're looking for that silver lining in that black cloud for the silver and black, what are a few positive numbers that you kind of mined through the season for the Raiders?
Well, I mean, Brock Bowers is the most positive number you could ever have. And Ashton Genty, Ashton Genty is also a really great pick. The numbers didn't go probably where fantasy football players would have loved for him. But this guy, we did talk about him a lot on, throughout the entire season. But his ability to earn after getting tackled, it still was really high. The problem was he was being tackled behind the line of scrimmage. So Ashton Genty himself played very well. The situation was not so great. So I think both of those young prospects are still really, really, really exciting pieces that are going to be a huge part of the future.
And when you talk about that future, you talk about Brock Bowers and Clint Kubiak bringing his offense from the Super Bowl champion Seahawks to Las Vegas. The Seahawks, under Kubiak's direction, at least as the play caller, they were the most successful team running 12 personnel, at least according to Pro Football Focus.
Yep.
How excited not only should fans be, but I guess Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer be, considering that 12 personnel was one of the benchmarks for the Seahawks last year?
Well, I think you can even go a step further, and then you could look at the running potential, like what happened when the Seahawks ran the ball out of 12, which was a very successful strategy for them as well. And then play action came off of that. So not only should Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer be excited, but I also think the Ashton Jeanty should be excited. And, whatever quarterback happens to be there, who's, he's in a room around here somewhere. I don't know where he is right this minute, but we'll find him.
Yeah, and again, from Ashton Jeanty's perspective, I mean, who was the MVP of the Super Bowl just a couple of weeks ago? Let me think. A running back, Kenneth Murray. So, again, there's a lot of things to be excited about on that side of the ball. Yes, Kenneth Walker, Super Bowl MVP. And when you come to the defensive side of the ball, this week a little bit of a rustle at the combine, rustling the leaves, so to speak. They're going into a 3-4 base defense. What exactly should that mean for what the Raiders are trying to do on that side of the ball?
I mean, look, the Raiders right now need to be focused on one thing, and he has 2 X's in his name, and we keep him here. That should be the focus. Number 1, Max Crosby. But when you're looking at this 3-4, nobody really plays a ton of base anymore. So it's all about what's the initial principle. So perhaps the initial principles will be a little bit different because, it's like a tree, right? Like you have your 3-4, okay, but then what does the back end do? Perhaps they've taken a look across what's available to them in free agency and what's available to them in the draft and said, this is how we get the best front. Let's just call it front because, again, the percentage of times that someone's in like a base defense just very low. Right. So I think what they're really trying to do is much like the Seahawks, they're trying to rush with just 4. And get actual good pressure with just 4 without having to blitz so they can drop guys back in coverage. That would be my guess, but I'm an outsider. I don't know.
Could something like that unlock like a Tyree Wilson that he wouldn't have to have his hand down there? He can now kind of be a stand-up kind of a linebacker. Like you said, the guy with the 2 X's in his name, he could stand up a little bit more. Does that change exactly what they want to do with the personnel? Or like you said, because very few teams are in their base. It's it's more of a mismatch. It's being in a zone defense, things like that.
Right. I think the familiarity with the defenses in this division, like in the division he was in. So when you look at what happened in the NFC West last year, I think he learned a lot about what did Robert Saleh want to do against him. What did Sean McVay, what to the I think they learned a lot about how defenses wanted to stop his offense. So I think he's taking that learning and saying, I think how this in the AFC West with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and the Broncos, like that, how that all could translate. So I think it's more of like a learning in a situation to try to stop what he thinks coming for him in the AFC West.
I got a couple more for you, Cynthia. One, I've seen where you've talked about there are secret meetings happening at the Combine between agents and teams regarding how they're going to use potentially the tags on certain guys. Have you heard anything like that regarding the Raiders? And if so or if not, where could those discussions go?
I have not heard that. Now, I don't think the Raiders will have to tag anyone because they have so much money available to them in free agency. A lot of the tag stuff is often to do with when you have some cap issues and you need to restructuring and blah, blah, blah. But, I don't think the Raiders have to worry about that, which I think makes players happier because players don't typically want to be tagged.
Exactly.
At all.
But no, they want to get their security and get their contract going forward. Hey, and then lastly, I also saw this was that you were selected as the moderator for the 3rd annual Women in the NFL luncheon at the Combine. How not only much of an honor is that for you, but how has that helped you, the community of women in the NFL, helped you out in terms of what you're doing for the career and the analysis that you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because what they really did well at that whole women's luncheon was pick different phases of women in their career. So some were interns, some were mid-level, some were a little bit further along in their career. And it really put everyone to like, what are you seeing? How are you interpreting this? What's going? It was pretty strategic with how you can have action items taken away because sometimes we just get in a room and you're like, blah, 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 yay, great. But this was actually like very informative about like what was your how did you do this? How did you make this happen? Like we had one of the women on the panel was the first ever DEI VP in the entire NFL. Now every team has one of those. Well, how did you create a new role that no one had done before, and then get all 32 or 31 other teams to buy in that role was important too? Because that's the type of stuff, like, give me some action items. And I was really, really impressed with how well they structured that. And that is how women have helped me. I've asked specific questions to get to a specific, like, because I want to do things that don't have like I don't want to be the next anyone. I want to be trying to make this data thing cool. Trying. But yeah, so.
As you've always said, and as I've always kind of agreed, I always agree with you, actually. There is power in numbers. Cynthia, thank you so much for your time. I know you have got a busy day.
Thank you so much.
More to come on First Stop Indy. Co-host of Raiders NFL Draft Pod, Rhett Lewis, joins the show.
It's game day, the day we've been waiting for. And this is more than just a game. It's a passion, a lifestyle. Here at the Raider Image, you're part of our team. Whether you're in the stands or cheering from home, we've got your back. Feel the confidence, own the game.
We
are the Raider Image. Your game, your gear. Exclusively at the Raider Image.
When I found out we had to move to Italy, I was pretty shocked. And it was a crazy experience to, tell all, my teammates, my coaches, all my friends that, in, a month or so I'll be packing up, moving overseas, and, you'll probably never see me again. I think the hardest thing in life is to handle change, and, such a big change early has really set me up, to where I'm at now. Playing football in Italy, it was fun, but, it wasn't the most competitive. But, just getting to travel and see different aspects of different countries. I mean, going to Germany, going to Spain, going to different places around Italy.
Ashton carved out his path, living in Italy, where American football wasn't as mainstream. Ashton and the game of football found their way to each other.
I love it, man. Matter of fact, when I walked in the locker room, I thought I was going to start crying.
It's fantastic. It's a beautiful stadium.
Hey, welcome to First Stop Indy, presented by EOS Fitness. I am now joined by Rhett Lewis, who is living his best life in many ways, but he's also the co-host of Raiders Draft Podcast with Bucky Brooks. But first, Rhett, like I said, living your best life as an Indiana alum. I mean, I can't even imagine what you're feeling right now from that aspect of your life. I mean, I guess I can go back personally. Yeah. UNLV won the national title in basketball in '90, and the Rebels won the LA Bowl last year, beating Cal, which, okay. Cal was weakened a little bit because they didn't have a quarterback who transferred to your school. Again, Rhett, just right off the bat, let's just dive into this here with the number one pick the Raiders select.
Oh, it's Fernando Mendoza. It's the Heisman Trophy winner. It's the national champion. I think there is some talk certainly about where Fernando would fit in other years with other number one overall picks and other quarterbacks. And gosh, guys, I think he's right up there. It's not just because he might be the only first-round quarterback this year. I just think he's that good. Like, to me, there is a gap between Fernando and the next quarterback, which I think is probably Ty Simpson from Alabama. Yeah. And then there's probably another gap after that. So I think Fernando has firmly entrenched himself as the unquestioned number one quarterback, and as such, with the Raiders picking at number one, the number one pick. He checks all the boxes for me, and we can go through that list here if you got enough time.
Definitely, and that's what I was going to ask you about next. Was he's obviously he's shown a lot of different weapons in his game, but What about what he does? Sure. What I guess let me just ask you that. What are those boxes?
Yeah. So the things that I start with are his arm, the arm strength, and his accuracy is everything you want. Like the arm strength is not like Josh Allen, right? He's not going to throw it 1,000 yards, but it's more than enough. He is extremely accurate. You watch some of his NFL style throws, far left hash, throwing on a 12-yard out to the complete opposite side of the field, on the money, on a rope. Like his ball has RPMs on it. He can drive it anywhere on the field. He can throw the deep ball. His ball placement allowed Omar Cooper the opportunity to force 30 missed tackles this year. Like he puts it in a place where his receivers can go and get things done. So the arm stuff is there. The mobility, again, greatest play in Indiana football history, the 4th and 5 QB draw to help them win the game against Miami. Like that stuff showed up throughout some of the biggest games. He was making plays with his legs. Toughness, unquestioned. His teammates love him, but his superpower is unquestionably his brain. Yeah. He understands the game. He is a maniacal, as John Spytek said, preparer of the game. Like he wants to know everything, and he's got a great mind to absorb it and then to go out there and process it.
You almost said beautiful mind, and I remember that movie winning an Oscar.
He does have a beautiful mind.
I remember that. Yeah. How does the mind, the physical tools that he has, how does all of that, and I know it's very early in the game, but how could that potentially fit into what Clint Kubiak wants to do as the Raiders' new head coach, as he brings his scheme in, his offense, his play calling? Right. How does that all fit?
Well, look, I think quarterbacks, I don't want to say it's simple, but I want to say that that system is a quarterback-friendly system. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it necessarily has to be for Fernando, because I think he is a high-level learner of the game, and I think, again, understands high-level concepts and puts it together in a split second like you have to in this game from the quarterback spot. So I think he's going to fit perfectly in this thing. I think he's got enough mobility to, move on some of the pocket movement stuff that I think you'll see in this offense. I think he is, there's just, he can place the ball anywhere on the field that this offense will require him to go in. And I think Clint is going to have to kick him out of the facility. Like he is going to have to be like, Fernando, enough, man. I've got a family. I got to go home. That's how Fernando operates. So I think he'll love him from a prep standpoint. He'll love him from an execution standpoint, and his teammates will love him from a leadership standpoint. And that's everything you could ask for a number one pick.
Yeah, and something else that's real intriguing here, too, is the coaching staff that Clint has kind of assembled here. 5 of the coaches that he's brought in have ties to him from previous stops. In fact, his OC, Andrew Janocko, was with him for the past 3. He's with him in New Orleans, with him in Seattle, with him now in Las Vegas. And he's been more of a quarterback's coach under him before when Clint was the OC calling the plays. What does that relationship look like from Janocko? And you've seen the guys that he's worked with in the past and gotten kind of the best out of them. How does that help potentially? I'm going to keep saying potentially. Yeah. If Fernando is the guy to make that transition from college to the NFL.
Well, look, I think the quarterback relationship is really important, even if that coach is not the one calling the plays or is not the one doing the bulk of the game planning. But I look at what Andrew did with Sam as obviously a great proof of concept of how that relationship is going to work with the next one. And then I look at what Fernando did with his quarterback coach this year at Indiana, Chandler Whitmer, who's now coaching Baker Mayfield in Tampa. And I listened to the way that Fernando talks about how Chandler really developed his game and kind of helped him become the best version of himself, who helped him understand how his skills needed to refine in order to become an NFL quarterback. That was one of the biggest pieces of Fernando's transfer from Cal to Indiana. Is he wanted to be developed more. He wanted to be coached more, and he got that with Chandler Whitmer, Mike Shanahan, the OC, and obviously Kurt Cignetti, who's a little heavy-handed with quarterbacks from his head coaching perch there. And so I think when you look at Clint, and we talked about this on the first episode of the podcast, with Bucky, in that, like, he's been around some great quarterbacks. He's been around all kinds of different quarterbacks. The one thing that we haven't really seen is like the young quarterback, the rookie quarterback, coming in is a top draft pick. That's the kind of the one piece of it you haven't seen. But I think, you look at Sam Darnold, while on his fifth team, was still a young player, right, and was still a player that required development, even when Clint was first with him in San Francisco. So I look at all that as really as positives, and I feel like it's a coaching staff, and this is a player that are both set up to succeed together.
Rhett, when you look at the combine, and there's always a bunch of hullabaloo is made whether players participate or they don't, what should or shouldn't be taken away from the fact, or if Fernando does or doesn't throw at the combine or participate in a majority of the events?
Yeah. I think he's not going to throw, and I don't care, because I saw him for 16 games this last year, and especially the last 4 games against some of the best players in college football: Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon for the second time, and then Miami. And I saw him answer the bell every time. And he is at his best when his best is required. And I don't know that is necessarily the case on Saturday here at the Combine. Like, he has showed you everything that he needs to show. It's all on tape. Just go watch it. I don't know that for him, throwing to a bunch of guys, in shorts and T-shirts is really going to make a huge difference. I think it could help guys down the line in this quarterback class, like Garrett Nussmeier and Drew Aller and Cade Klubnik and Ty Simpson. I think and Luke Altmaier, I think they have something to gain from this. Right. Whereas with Fernando, why? I totally understand his decision. He also just finished the season a month ago. Yeah. And he is, he's going to throw. He's going to throw at his pro day on April 1st in Bloomington, just 45 miles south of here. So you're going to see what you need to see from him. He's going to be able to check all the boxes for the Raiders staff if that's the way they want to go. I don't think this is a big deal that he's not going to throw.
And we keep going deep dive here on the Fernando, obviously, but you have a unique connection there with the university. What have you seen that's different between Fernando the person and Fernando the player?
Fernando, I think, is, in the best way possible, is a bit of a chameleon. He understands and is so self-aware that he understands what is required of him in any environment, right? Which I think is why you see, some of the interviews, then people are like, oh, it kind of sounds like a presentation. He just understands, he wants to project, his best possible self in those scenarios, but he can kick back and hang with the boys, just like anybody can. And so, I think he wants to be everything to everyone. And what the cool thing, I think, is that, that's all still very authentic to who he is. I think self-awareness is a really important quality in players that are going to be, in the conversation to be drafted number 1 overall, and he's got it in spades. I think he's got a great personality, and I think you're going to see that here, especially when he talks to the media later this week, and then when he has more opportunities to be in front of cameras and microphones, you'll start to see that even more.
Rhett, thank you for your time, and I just wanted to get one last take from you here. As you work with Bucky on the draft pod, and you guys do the deep dive into things on the Raiders, what have you seen that's different between what you're learning about the Raiders' perspective and what the national narrative is about the Raiders' perspective going into the draft?
Yeah, look, I think there's certainly a perspective out there from some people, that, all right, they're going to bring Fernando in, but then what? Right? How are they going to protect him? How are they going to give him playmakers out there to throw it to? You've certainly got the play caller now in Clint Kubiak. But, where do you go to get the playmakers and the protection that he needs to be successful early on in his career? That's what we're here for, folks. The Raiders NFL Draft Podcast, each and every week, giving you opportunities to learn more about those players beyond Fernando as we get into the second round and beyond. And, the first pick in the first 3 rounds, is a great opportunity to continue to fortify this roster. And so that's what we're going to be diving into over the course of the next couple of weeks as we go through Pro Day season once we leave here, and talking about some potential offensive linemen, some potential receivers, and all of those scenarios there that are going to help the Raiders bring a championship to Las Vegas.
That's what they call a tease. And real quickly, I was going to ask you, what exactly can we expect from episode 3 of the Draft Pod coming up from you guys?
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of my favorite episodes because we get a chance to kind of absorb all the information, all the data that we have seen over the course of these 4 days of on-field workouts in Indianapolis. And then Bucky and I will get back next week and we'll put something together here kind of highlighting the numbers that matter, the names you need to know that put up those numbers, the things that make you say wow while you were watching it on NFL Network. And we'll recap all of that. So a big-time Combine recap coming your way early next week, episode 3 of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. Many more to come, though. Looking forward to it.
Rhett, keep living your best life. Appreciate you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks, Paul.
Take care. Coming up, Kirk Morrison joins the show to talk about his own Combine memories, as well as talk about what the Raiders need to do on defense.
Raider Nation, when the autumn wind fades, a new storm begins. Draft season is here. Welcome back for Season 4 of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Rhett Lewis from NFL Network, and former NFL scout and Raider Bucky Brooks is back with me this season for your front row seat to one of the most important off seasons in Raider history. And this year, the Raiders sit at the very top of the board for the first time in nearly 2 decades, the number 1 overall pick and 10 total selections. A new chapter begins under General Manager John Spytek and head coach Clint Kubiak. We'll explore draft philosophy, roster construction, and the moves that could shape the future of the organization. The NFL Draft runs April 23rd through April 25th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is where the future of the silver and black begins. Listen on Raiders.com, the Raiders app, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
It's game day. The day we've been waiting for. And this is more than just a game. It's a passion, a lifestyle. It's time to suit up, Raider Nation. This is Raiders football, where we all bleed silver and black. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Here at the Raider Image, you're part of our team. Every hat, every piece of gear. Let your loyalty show out. Whether you're in the stands or cheering from home, we've got your back. Feel the confidence, own the game.
We
are the Raider Image. Your game, your gear. Exclusively at the Raider Image.
Hey, welcome to First Stop Indy, presented by EOS Fitness. And I'm joined now by my guy, Kirk Morrison. Kirk, we came to the Raiders together, so to speak. My first year on the beat was 2005. You were a rookie that season. Now I'm with the team. You're with the team on the radio side of things. I just wanted to dive into this part of it because in all the years of covering the Raiders in the NFL, I've never actually stepped foot at a combine. You've been there both sides of it, and I kind of take pride in that. But for you, what was that like as a player going through that process way back in 2005, and what's a good Al Davis story from the combine if you got one?
Man, first of all, appreciate it always to be with you, Paul. Man, going back to 2005, it's I remember the draft was not at Lucas Oil Stadium. It was at the old RCA Dome.
That's right.
Here in Indianapolis. And so it was a little bit different. You talk about as cold as it was outside, it was the same temperature on the inside.
Yeah.
It was like an indoor stadium, but yet it was just as cold. But, my experience was a little bit different because, remember, I was part of the Senior Bowl, and the Raiders were a part of the Senior Bowl as the coaching staff. And so I had a lot of those informal meetings with the Raiders staff at the Senior Bowl so that when we got to the Combine, I was calling the coaches by first name. Norv Turner was our head coach with the Raiders at the time, and I see, Coach Norv, what's up? You know what I mean? Rob Ryan was a D coordinator, so you kind of had this relationship that you've built throughout the process, and you get to the Combine, and it was kind of an ongoing thing. So excited for that opportunity, and you get to the on-field workouts, and you mentioned Mr. Davis and his seat right along that. He was right near the 10-yard line, I believe, or he sat right there in the stands. That was his thing. He loved to be there and watch the guys go out and compete. And so a little intimidating at the beginning, but you go out there, you perform, and you do your best, and that's what I did back in 2005, and I got drafted in the 3rd round, and the rest is history.
Yeah, 3rd round, 78th overall. So obviously, if he's sitting there at the 10-yard line, was that at the beginning or the end of the 40-yard sprint? And what was your time, if you remember? Because obviously everybody remembers that Mr. Davis loved the 40 times.
Yeah. So so for me, he was at the beginning.
Okay.
And I did not run the 40 at the combine.
Oh, okay.
But you have to walk up to the line and announce yourself. So Kirk Morrison, I'm declining to run the 40. I'll be running the 40 at my pro day in San Diego, which, by the way, every assistant coach that was there was excited because now they had a free trip to San Diego to come watch me run the 40 in March. So It's funny. I've had in seeing a lot of the guys who are still in the NFL saying, man, one of the more memorable pro days was mine because we had a lot of athletes that were coming out of San Diego State at that time. Yeah. But more importantly, were all the scouts and general managers and assistant coaches who got a chance to go to San Diego for a weekend in March instead of being somewhere else in the later stages of winter. So, but that was just part of it. Yeah. That was part of it. But Mr. Davis was always there, and you saw him, and just let him know I won't be doing that. But I went out there and. I did everything else. I did all the workout stuff in terms of on-field drills. I think I did, the vertical jump, things that I felt I wanted to do, but I was I was afraid to open up at that time. I had a little minor hamstring injury, and I just wanted a couple more weeks, and ran the 40 at my pro day.
Being a guy that went to high school in Oakland, grew up in Oakland, and then the team was back in Oakland at that point, and being at San Diego, a mid-major school then, I mean, what was that like just mentally for you to see Al Davis sitting there watching you? But also, how can that moment not become too big for you as well as the guys that are there right now?
I think for me, it was hard because it's a dream come true. It's like, this is the great Al Davis, the owner of the Raiders, a guy who I looked up to throughout my whole life as the architect, the CEO, the man. Like, when you think of Raiders, you think of Al Davis. So it's kind of hard because once you get past that, you realize you've got to go out there and go handle your business. I think, throughout that process, another cool story I even shared today with a couple of the young athletes that I met with who are here at the Combine was, you see these guys growing up in your early stages of football. And then all of a sudden, the people you saw on TV are right in front of you. Mm-hmm. And it really hit me the first time that I think one of the first meetings I had at the Combine, I walk into the room and I sit down at the table, and all these coaches on the opposite side of the table, and the head coach is in the middle. He stands up, and I reach my hand out. He reaches his hand out and says, "Hey, how you doing? I'm Andy Reid, head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles." And you're like, this is really Andy Reid. Oh, my God. I've made it. I'm not even drafted yet, but here we are meeting with some of the great minds and some of the great coaches that I've watched, and that's part of the nostalgia of being at the Combine, of meeting those types of people and also seeing Mr. Davis and what he means and what those guys mean to what you think is going to be a long career in the NFL at some point.
When you look, Kirk, at the current Raiders, they have to stand up and reach across the table and shake hands with a new coach, Clint Kubiak. And if you're playing on the defensive side of the ball, they got to reach across to a familiar face, at least, if you're returning, in Rob Leonard as the defensive coordinator, promoted from defensive line coach. Yeah. Not sure if you saw the reports yet, but Clint spoke to local reporters out there today, said they are switching to a 3-4 base defense. You being the old linebacker, the old school linebacker, how does that change what the Raiders can and can't do, especially with the personnel? Their 3 starters at linebacker last year, they're all free agents. What does this mean for the defense going forward?
Honestly, I don't think this changes really much. A base 3-4 is only when you're in the base package. Right. In today's NFL, how much are you running base defense? This has always kind of been a 4-down scenario for a lot of defenses out there. But we'll see what it looks like if you're playing more base versus 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, or having 2 backs in the game. It's going to be a week-to-week sort of formation or alignment or personnel grouping when it comes to the Raiders defense. But look, the base package is going to be 3-4. So what does that look like? Is it more guys who are able to be outside linebackers and edge rushers? So you may see some different things, some different looks, but I like the versatility that the defense is going to present. I just know that in the NFL now, with primarily one tight end, one running back, and 3 wide receivers, very rarely are teams in that base personnel. Right. But to be able to have, something else to go to when teams do go to a 1-back, 2 tight end type of look, I think the Raiders will be well equipped for that.
When you're talking about the team, the way it's currently constructed, Kirk, and you're there looking at the combine, who are some of the linebackers that are kind of grabbing your attention right now? They could be realistic targets for the Raiders. Obviously, they drafted number 1, and I think everybody figures where they're going to go with that. Right. But going on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, later on, what are some of the linebackers that are kind of jumping out at you, especially now with the shift to a 3-4?
Yeah, I've had guys I've been looking at, and when you think of 3-4, are we talking old school 3-4 or new school 3-4? Because I say old school 3-4, you had linebackers that were 250 pounds who had to go up and hit guards every day. And now that's kind of been a little bit different now, because you have guys that have amazing quickness, ability to get from point A to point B. And so you don't have to deal with the big guards that you had to before in the old 3-4. And this new 3-4, I'm looking at guys like a Arvell Reese who can be, an outside guy, but also an inside linebacker. I love C.J. Allen. Had a chance to talk with him, the linebacker out of Georgia. He's one of those guys that can get from point A to point B, and he played behind an outstanding D-line over at Georgia. Another guy that I was just really, really impressed with. He's the Butkus candidate, Butkus winner of this year. Won pretty much every defensive award there is in the linebacker, Jacob Rodriguez, from over at Texas Tech. So those are kind of the guys I've been looking at. And look, with the Raiders having the 10 picks in front of them, I don't know where those guys are going to fall. Hopefully they fall to the Raiders, and, you can draft a guy and he's going to be in the building for many years to come. But those are some of the players that I think will fit in what this defense is going to be about, chasing guys, getting guys down, and making tackles for loss.
You can take the guy out of being a linebacker, but you can't take a linebacker out of the guy. Kirk, thank you so much for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Paul, man, appreciate it anytime, man.
Hey, I want to thank today's guests, the NFL Network's Cynthia Frelund, co-host of the Raiders NFL Draft Podcast, Rhett Lewis, and Raiders radio color analyst Kirk Morrison, for helping me break down and dive deeper into the opening days of the Combine. To watch more exclusive First Stop Indy content and to stay up to date on all things silver and black, visit the Raiders official YouTube page and Raiders.com.